Hi everyone, welcome back to Valley View Flower Farm. Just doing a little bit of maintenance today, planting some liliums in the center of our field here. This area here I was going to put in a gazebo, but that'll be a few years away yet. So in the meantime I've planted some liliums, and that's where I'm going to plant all my gladioli bulbs and also my sunflowers. Waste not, want not when it comes to space. I've been harvesting a few tulips, but everything else is not quite ready to harvest yet. We're a bit slow in the season, even though it's been, I think, unseasonably warm. Things are slow to take off. I've got these poppies, which I didn't realise. I knew poppies grew big, but I didn't sort of think how big they would grow, and they're totally shading my peonies, so I'm having to, you can see all the mess there. I've just been pulling the leaves off to give the peonies a bit more sun, and they're just so vigorous, the poppies. So but once they flower I'll be able to pull them out. So a few things in bud, such as the foxy foxglove. But otherwise, and there's a lupin. Everything else is a bit slow. We'll wait till all those florets open on the lupin, and I'll test that in the vase at home before I think about selling that. I've heard that lupins can be a little bit difficult, and you have to be careful at what stage you harvest them. All my stocks are finished, and I've replanted those areas with more snapdragons and a few other bits and pieces, some carnations. Status is about to flower. The heads are there. Swoop William, that's been good so far, with lots more heads to come on. Billy buttons, they're all ready to bud up. Alliums, just about to break out into flower, so that'll be nice. Honeywort, I think in one of my last videos I said I was thinking about ripping that out. Well, I'm glad I didn't, because that's been absolutely fabulous. It's a great filler and it lasts in the vase for ages. So if you haven't planted honeywort or cerinthe, give it a go. It's very drought hardy. Yeah, and it's fantastic. The bees love it. Snapdragons coming along in this bed over here. We've got some budding up. So they won't be too much longer. So you'll notice I have little patches of everything. It's my first year, just trying things, seeing what works. It's going to be very interesting this year with the upcoming dry summer. So what doesn't cope in our climate, I won't plant again, and what thrives, I'll obviously do bigger patches next year. The daffodils are nearly done. These ones were okay. Their stems were a little short, but it's their first year. My experience with daffodils is they only get better over time, and their stems get taller. We also had a mild winter. So this is how I pick them in gooseneck stage. This is a double-headed daffodil, and I don't cut them, I just pull them straight out and they just pop out. And then you can then offer them, or they stay in the vase longer. What else have we got? Just everything's starting to bud up. We do have some GMs flowering, obviously way too small to do anything with, but I really like them. They're sweet. About to put some hooflung dung. So whilst these beds are topped with mushroom compost, and like I said, I don't do drip irrigation or anything, and we just hand water. The soil The soil's pretty dry. So I find whilst the mushroom compost is good, it just needs that extra help to retain moisture. And if you haven't tried Hooflung Dung, I suggest you do. I'll open it up and I'll show you what it looks like. It's a bit smelly for a couple of days, a bit like dynamic lifter, but because it's got the chicken manure in it, but after a while that smell goes away. I don't suggest you put it too close around the base of tender plants, but once they're established a little bit, they'll be fine, because it might burn them. But otherwise, I think it's a fantastic product. It's a little bit expensive. Those bales cost me $21 at Bunnings, and it says it covers 3 to 6 square meters depending on how thickly you place it. I do it fairly thickly because I don't want to have to repeat it. So yeah, a little bit expensive, but I find it'll last 6 to 8 months in the garden. And I also find that it deters birds. So if you've got blackbirds or other birds digging up the flowers in your garden, or being a pest, scratching the mulch and spreading it everywhere, try some Hooflung Dung, put it over your garden beds, and I find it really helps with blackbirds. So there's a free tip for you. So this is what we've been doing on the other side of the flower farm, and this is going to be, I think I mentioned it in my last video, a perennial style cutting garden. So it's just a display on how you can use cut flowers in a normal perennial bed type setup. So I've got some of the things that I've got in the cutting raised beds I've repeated in this garden, and there's some other things. So more of my shrubby things in this section, and the other point of this garden is to hide the ugly back of the shed. So I've got a clematis, a very vigorous clematis to grow up this bird netting, and I've also got some shrubs that I'd like to cut from in here. I also have some peonies which have just started to come up, and some Canary Island foxglove which I have in my garden, and if you haven't grown those, again, they are magnificent, beautiful spikes of flowers. I'll put a picture up of a photo that I've taken in my garden of them. Drought hardy, so I do grow normal foxgloves, but they're just water guzzlers, and these Canary Island foxgloves are absolutely fantastic, and because they're perennial, they just keep getting bigger and bigger, and you can divide them, and they just keep flowering for ages. So I've got those in here. I've got eucalyptus for cutting. I've got some bulbs which you can't see yet, and a few other bits and pieces. And this is another bed that I'm in the middle today of planting out. And I'm a pretty relaxed gardener. I don't worry too much about bed preparation. This is how I've done all my gardens, and I just create a space. I try and remove as much weed as possible. I usually sheet mulch over the top, which means laying down thick layers of newspaper and then lucerne hay over the top. But because these plants are so small, I'm going to put Hooflung Dung over this bed, and then I'll just deal with any weeds as they come up, and then in winter I will remulch properly with lucerne the same way I have done here. So this bed is just a range of billy buttons and statice and fairly sun hardy Rebeckias and things that'll cope with the exposure. Over the back there I get a little bit more shade, so I'll be putting some more shade loving plants in that section. The same goes with this area here. I've got some obedient plant, and I have some straw flowers. I also have a few different shrubs and things that I've raised from seed, like I've got some angelica, which I'm very excited about. I don't know if you can see that. This is angelica here in this little pot, and I'll put a picture up of what that looks like. It's very impressive, and you can use the flowering heads as cut flowers. And I also have some astilbe, so I'm going to try that this year. I'll put some bigger rocks at the back here to provide a bit of shade in the afternoon, because this, where I'm standing now, is looking east, so obviously west is behind me where the heat of the afternoon comes from. So I'm just trying to put some different things out here and just see how they go, because the perennials, I'm finding some of the perennials just take up too much room in the beds. So I'm just going to balance what I can fit in the raised beds and then what I can fit in the garden. So we've got some more work to do, obviously, on fixing up our pathways. We're trying to source free chip from the arborist to put down instead of paying for pathway chip, because that gets expensive. What else am I trying this year? I'm also trying some ranunculus. I've grown it in the garden before, but never experienced really long stems. So I've got my first little flower. So this is who-flung dung. This is the product I was talking about, made by Nutrog. It's a biologically active, sort of nutrient-rich mulch or compost, and it has been made with chicken manure, so like I said, it's a bit stinky. So it's compressed fairly hard into a brick in the packet, and you just need to break it up, and then you just throw it in around your plants. You don't need it too thick. So I'm putting it here in particular around my delphiniums, because you'll notice that the leaves are yellowing a little bit. So I think they're heavy feeders from what I can understand, and I think they also like it moist but not wet. So I'm hoping that the application of who-flung dung will help with that, and it'll also help not only retain moisture but also improve the soil. So yeah, suggest, if you haven't tried who-flung dung, to give it a go. It's fairly easy to put out, and you can buy it at Bunnings and Mitre 10, and I'm not affiliated with any products. I just like Nutrog products, who-flung dung. I also use sea mungus too when I plant my plants out, and they've got quite a few different other products that I like to use as well. Sudden impact for roses, all those things, but yeah, this one in particular is my favourite. This is the garlic, and it seems to be going well. I find it easier to look after in these raised beds, a bit easier on my back. I've also, these are the leeks. They're a bit slower, but I planted these really small, so they're taking a little bit longer, but that's okay. Got plenty of time. So I've been making market bunches to take to the local cafe, and I'll put some pictures up of those. And I've been selling them, all cut flowers from this little garden here and also from my yard garden, and they've been selling really well. So this is my third weekend of selling cut flowers at O'Connell Cafe. We'll just see how that goes. I've got a couple of markets coming up in November, so hopefully I'll have enough volume. I'm going to have a flower bar type setup where people can just come and, you know, choose the flowers they want, put them in a jar and take them home. So thanks for watching. I'll give you an update of where I get to with the perennial bed garden if I make some progress over the weekend, and appreciate all the support the YouTube community is giving me. Love to hear your comments, love the feedback. I really appreciate it. Thanks everyone. Bye.